Got up for work this morning, like 4:30, 5 a.m., something like that. First article's coming out already. Khamzat was reportedly going to fight at UFC 300 in the main event, but he's blocked from getting into the United States. Now, let me make it clear. I don't know how true this is. That's why I say reportedly. This is what's being reported. And if it's true, that's crazy. First of all, let me just say, I told you that he was in the mix to fight at UFC 300. We heard about Ramadan. We heard about him not being able to get into the US. But I still think the UFC was working on that behind the scenes, because you guys got to understand, Khamzat is going to be a Conor McGregor type figure. Yeah, I said it. If they let him. But see, him not being able to get into the country potentially to fight in the main event at UFC 300, if this is all true, prevents him from that rise. It prevents him from rising to that level right now. But the UFC, I promise you, looks at him as being that type of figure. Because whenever he's involved in a fight, it always ends up turning into craziness. Even when he didn't make weight, it was crazy. Then he's going to lose to Burns and Usman, who, if you go back 2-3 years ago, you said, no way that's going to happen. He's going to beat both those guys. And he beat them both. And then after he beats them both, then it's, he should have lost on decision. Okay, whatever. The man won the fights. And I'm just telling you, his stardom is rising. Yeah, he didn't fight Nate Diaz. He would have whooped him. Instead, he faced Kevin Holland, who's pretty darn good, and beat him in 2 minutes by submission. Straight takedown domination. And he's a guy the UFC can use to build a card around. There's just no mistaking it. And they were definitely trying to get him at 300. Now I want to know who he was going to fight. And I don't have the article pulled up in front of me. I try to scroll down, but I don't remember seeing anything on that as I read 95% of the article. And it's like, okay, if he was, reportedly going to fight at UFC 300 and you couldn't get into the United States, who was he going to fight? I'd be very intrigued to know those names. Would it be Adesanya? Would it be Pereira? I mean, could it have been Alex Pereira versus Khamzat Chimaev at UFC 300 for the light heavyweight title? Would have been ridiculous. Now, Ramadan does play a factor. There's a lot of factors here. This is why I say take everything with a grain of salt that you hear. But again, this is a major news outlet reporting this story this morning. So, you got to take it serious. And it's a shame that they couldn't make it happen, that they couldn't get him into the country for certain affiliations he has to fight at UFC 300. I mean, it's wild. So we got a couple people weighing in on Khamzat. You see Papa DJ Rowe, it looks like. Honestly, it shouldn't be a problem at all, letting them into the U.S. All the immigrants coming through are not just of Mexico. They are of 160 different nations. Oh, so he's taking it there. And a good portion of those are known to be of a certain not so good type. Do the math on it. They pick and choose who they want in this country. All right, so Papa DJ Rowe is going deep on this one. I mean, I guess you could say that. I'm driving to work this morning listening to Joe Rogan and Dr. Phil, and they're getting into all that stuff. So it's funny, both these things are happening on the same day. But yeah, I mean, the word is you can get into the country. You just can't get in legally, is what it would seem like. And that's a shame. Especially when he's a UFC level fighter. So now what if another country decides, hey, Sean Strickland isn't allowed into our country? I mean, it's think about that. Think about that. If they said, hey, Sean Strickland's not allowed in this country, so now the UFC, and it's a bigger deal where it's the US, because that's where most of the fights are. But trust me when I tell you, as his stardom rises, there will be a lot more fights outside of the U.S. at our own detriment. Maybe they have 2-3 fights a year overseas instead of 1 or 2. Maybe it turns into 5 or 10, because now we're going to start picking and choosing who can come into the country, who can't. So that's a problem in the sports world in and of itself. But, I don't know everything either. But the bottom line is, just as a UFC fan, it seems kind of crazy that we're going to start picking and choosing what fighters can come into the country or not. And if this is a rising guy, a rising star power, and you're going to say he can't come in, and now that's forced the UFC to go overseas to let him fight. I mean, it's just slippery slope, man. Slippery slope. But it is what it is. And, that's what was reported today, and I just couldn't believe it. I'm just like, man, this is crazy. I mean, this is crazy. At the producer weigh-in, it says UFC is not that crazy to do this fight. Izzy would get wrestled and probably subbed. This fight is so pointless. It would ruin Izzy's stock. Yeah, and of course, talking about Khamzat. Gotta love when the motorcycles come by. I love it. Add a little sound to the show. But yeah, talking about Khamzat versus Adesanya. That came up today too. I wonder who would win that fight.
Khamzat Chimaev!
It wouldn't go Izzy's way.
Whoa!
As much as I love Izzy, Izzy's going down on that one. What do you think's been going on since Khamzat's been last in the octagon? He's just getting better. He's 29 now. He's in the prime window. The time is now, right? Because it's going to be a big deal if Khamzat turns 30 and he hasn't fought for a title yet and he's undefeated. People are going to start talking.
Are you serious?
Yeah, people are going to start talking.
Serious?
Because now it falls onto the UFC. Because the guy's saying he'll fight anybody. So, but now the country's saying, hey, you can't come here. So you got a major problem.
Everybody's upset.
A slippery slope. Can you imagine the Khamzat fans reading this news today? It's crazy. You wake up this morning. If you drink coffee, you're drinking coffee. If you just go right to the news and to the phone, you pull it up, whatever's going on. First thing in the morning, you see Khamzat was going to fight in the UFC 300 main event, but he couldn't get into the country.
Oh my God, bro.
It's crazy. And they're probably thinking like I'm thinking. I'm American. I'm like, hey, take this thing overseas. Let's do what we got to do. I want to see Khamzat fight. It's one of the baddest dudes on the planet. Now we're going to pick and choose and say you can't come. Don't get me started. Don't get me started. To me, it's just ridiculous. King Tarzi weighing in. Is this live? Of course. Yes. We are live. King Tarzi in the house. And you don't get as many views as the mobile live stream. But we got to do the podcast on here. So King Tarzi finding us on the other end. I hope everything is going well out there for you. We're just railing that Khamzat can't get into the country to fight at UFC 300. It's just wild. Imagine if they would have Jamal Hill is awesome. Take nothing away from Jamal Hill, but if they would have said Alex Pereira versus Khamzat Chimaev, people would have lost their minds. People would have lost their minds. But let's shift gears before this thing gets out of control, because I'm holding it in today. I'm trying to be a good guy today. It's very difficult. Not happy, because I think Khamzat should have fought at UFC 300, and it's going to be a historical event. And by the time they get to 400, that's 7-8 years away. Yeah. So Khamzat's missing out on this opportunity. And to me, it's a slippery slope as the UFC goes forward. Because now they're thinking, you know what? What if we would have just had UFC 300 in Brazil or wherever? and put Alex Pereira at the top. Maybe put a Khamzat up there and say, hey, listen, he's been talking all this smack. We're just going to put him up against the baddest dude on the planet at the biggest weight class they can both be, and let's go see it. And people would have lost their minds. You could have just went to Brazil or somewhere else. That's what the UFC made me think. The UFC isn't going to be stuck in the United States forever. It's where it's based out of. It's the way it looks right now. Then 4 years ago, you know what happened? Kind of shut everything down. They had to kind of reestablish and rebuild and stay local. But as things get back to normal, whatever that is, the UFC is going to start looking to go overseas more. And now you're going to give them a reason to do that? It's not good. It's not good for business. And at the end of the day, people make decisions based on dollars, especially when they're running corporations. So it's just not good. If this is true. But this is what's being reported by some major outlets.
He's gonna fight, wait, he's gonna fight, wait, hold your breath till the end of the night. Last fighter call, UFC at its height, yeah. Bringing that thunder with all his might, saying step up, wanna fight, hold up, think twice, gladiator, assassin, reckless, no abandon, walk through that cage, he'll leave your ass stranded, wake up, hey, where you at, hey, got hit in the head with a baseball bat.